Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?
It's me, Egbert, once again. I'm the new owner of this station. I went out and hired the best talk radio consultant, Jeff Allen from News Talk STL, and told him to hire the worst talent he could find. Jeff did exactly as I told him. Ladies and gentlemen, here are Brad and John.
You know, John, Shelley used to get mad at me all the time. There's this guy by the name of Billie Jean, and it's not Billie Jean, the Michael Jackson character. It's Billie Jean, G-E-N-E. He's an interesting guy. He's a marketing guru from San Diego. And one of the things came out, and I've talked about this before, and he has this sort of this interesting, list of his, I think it's Billie Jean's steps to success, and he has 13 things on there, which is sort of interesting. It starts with number 0, so there's actually 14 of them, okay? And I think number 2 or number 3 says, everything is your fault. In other words, you admit that, yeah, that was my fault. I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that.
Absolutely,
okay.
For sure.
And what's interesting is what is this? Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. This is day 5 after the debate last Thursday night. Okay, once again, every day there's something new that comes out. The Biden family is now blaming the makeup artist. Have you heard this part of the story?
I haven't heard the makeup artist, no. and what does the makeup artist have to do with it?
Well, supposedly when Mr. Biden, our president, was on hiatus in Camp David when he was, supposedly, under wraps for 7 days before he was practicing for the debate. He spent a good deal of time outside, and they said he got a nice tan. And what they're saying is the makeup artist made him look very pale. Well, I'm not kidding when I'm telling this. That they say that anybody who's been in TV, matter of fact, if you hear, Mark Cox has talked about this at one point in time too. There's a defining line in television when they went from standard broadcast to the high definition. When this has probably been
right.
Everybody has to use more makeup because the high definition shows all the wrinkles and and the bags under your eyes and stuff like that.
And the blemishes.
Right, and all that kind of stuff. So supposedly the makeup artist made him too pale. And
that's the problem with this debate performance.
But see, the interesting thing is last night he did this presentation, and now people are going, he looks like he got a spray tan. They're saying now he looks like Trump. So it's like okay, you go from being too light to now too dark. Is there a happy medium?
Now, hold on, Brad? Can you imagine if we were talking about a Caucasoid woman, a white woman, and we were talking about her skin tone and her appearance? The Petco crowd, the I have several fur babies crowd would complain about, I can't believe they're talking about a woman's looks. If it was a man, we wouldn't be talking about his age or his appearance.
But here's the interesting thing, and you may be too young to remember this, and this was brought home in my college education. There is a footnote in debate history.
1960. It's a huge deal, Brad. Explain it.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, of course. But for folks who don't know, you might want to explain it.
This was the first televised presidential debate. I don't believe there had been a televised presidential debate beforehand, but it was a debate between, at the time, Richard Nixon, who was, I believe, wasn't he the vice president under Truman?
He was, yep.
Okay, he was the vice president under Truman, and he was going up against this not new, but relatively young swashbuckler.
No, he wasn't. Hold on, he wasn't vice president.
Was he a senator?
Not under Truman. Gosh, I don't know. I should know off the top of my head.
Under Eisenhower? Was he vice president under Eisenhower?
Yeah, wait a minute. Would it be Eisenhower?
Yeah,
we could also look up while you do this.
Yeah, Eisenhower was the president.
Yeah, it was under Eisenhower. That's who it was.
Preceding JFK. Right. Okay, because it was Roosevelt, and then he passed away, and that's when Truman took over into.
Yep, and then Truman, and then Eisenhower and Kennedy.
Right,
You're right.
And that was the classic thing where Truman ran for re-election. And that was the classic thing where the newspaper, he was running against Dewey.
Dewey defeats Truman. So you were talking about in the 1960 debate, folks who you heard it on radio versus TV.
Right. Okay. So it was John F. Kennedy, the good-looking dude from Massachusetts, against Richard Nixon, and Richard Nixon was a very, I don't want to say hairy kind of guy, but he had a relatively thick beard. And at the time, he was still relatively young, where his beard was pretty much black. And apparently, he didn't have a shave that right before the debate. And he had a little bit back in the day before the whole Don Johnson thing came around. He had a 5 o'clock shadow, they used to call it, because if you had a heavy beard, you'd shave in the morning, and by 5 o'clock you'd have that stubble coming out, and you'd look like you're a little. And today nobody cares because of the fact everybody's got a beard, including me. So this was the interesting thing where people saw these two people on television, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, and they went like, "Oh my God, that Richard Nixon guy, he looks old. He looks sort of haggard. He's got that 5 o'clock shadow. Oh my God, JFK, what a handsome looking guy." So the idea being was that people didn't vote for Richard Nixon because he was at the time, a very high-profile politician, because he'd been around longer than JFK. They voted for JFK because he was a good-looking young dude.
Yeah.
And the idea being, this is like one of the footnotes in political history when it was the first time that, it was a political television debate, but people go like, "Oh my God, he's a good-looking guy. Look at that John F. Kennedy."
And the dichotomy between folks who listened on the radio felt that Nixon won the debate, and folks who watched on television saw that, believed that Kennedy won the debate. And Kennedy had one of his most famous quotes after that debate, Brad. Do you remember that?
Give it to me. I can't remember off the top of my head.
He said, "I need this debate like I need a hole in the head."
Never mind. Okay. Okay, John, what John said was exactly right. If you listened on radio, you'd say, "Well, Nixon won that debate." But if you watch it on television, people would say, "Oh, JFK won that debate." So the interesting part of this is that what's so crazy about this whole thing is that, once again, this is what you call a forced error, okay? Once again, we had the quote when, what was it, like a month and a half ago, when Joe Biden comes out, "Yeah, I'll meet you behind the stage. I'll punch your lights out. Come on, pal. I'll debate you any place, anywhere."
Yeah, right, exactly.
So the interesting part of it was that Trump said, "Okay, fine, your place, your rules." And everybody went, "Well, hold on a minute, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Why are you essentially, succumbing to the fact that he's calling you out?" And you're essentially saying, "Okay, fine, that's good. CNN, yeah, they hate me, but I'll still go on. Yep, they turn mics up. Yep. Now it turns out that, hindsight being 2020, it was the smartest thing Trump could have ever done.
Absolutely.
I mean,
it changed the complexion of the race more than I think any debate has in modern history.
But see, there are conspiracy theorists out there that say that his advisors did this on purpose to Biden, essentially saying, "Well, we know he's lost a step, and we know he's not going to do well." Because the other interesting part of this was, technically, the two people up there last Thursday night were not the presidential candidates, because the conventions have not been convened yet, and technically they're not the official candidates of their respective parties.
True.
Until they've been nominated by the convention.
That's true.
And normally the debates are always held sometime after, usually in September and October, sometime after the conventions, because that's when it pretty much decided at this point, although who knows what's going to happen with the Democrats. But it was, it's already decided that Trump's already won, Biden's already won. So there are conspiracy theorists who say this people behind the scenes in the Biden campaign did this on purpose, because they knew that it would not look good for Biden, and that would give them a chance to throw Biden under the bus and bring somebody new in. Now, it's interesting, just yesterday, Biden came out. There's already this stuff that talks about the fact, what about the people that donated all this money? What happens to that money? Did you see the official release on that from the Biden campaign?
No, I didn't see that.
They said that if Biden were to drop out, the money goes to Kamala.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that.
Yes.
Wow, Brad.
And now it's interesting because the story, I read it in two different places. The stories are both the same line, talking about the fact that there are some donors who go like, hey, can we get a refund?
Yeah, of course.
Who are now saying, we gave that money for Biden. We don't want to give that for Harris. Now, this is so bizarre. Once again, we started off the show by me making, what did you call me? You said I was, existentialism or some crazy stuff like that?
Yeah, you were very existentialist.
Okay. The crazy part of this whole thing is that once again, you and I and, everybody involved with this, but especially the political world, we are living in uncharted political history. Every single day there's a new wrinkle that comes around.
Yes.
Every single day. And the situation was last week. Obviously, Friday was, the dramatic, fallout from the debate. Yesterday was the official Supreme Court ruling, which has got reverberations, still thundering through the political crowd because of the fact that now people are saying, well, there's almost no chance that the Mar-a-Lago, top secret case and the other case involving him with the January 6th insurrectionists is ever going to go to court before the election. And people are saying right now that if he does win, that he'll just essentially say, you can't charge me anymore. I'm the president. And if he loses, they'll say, we don't care. He lost. That's all we did for anyway. So it's just so weird.
Now, Brad, is yesterday's ruling enough for one of your best traits, Brad, is your ability to dig in your heels and be stubborn? It's one of the best things about you. Will you acknowledge that the Will Scharf side won yesterday?
No, he's a loser. See, here's the interesting thing. By what your question is, why do we have to have winners and losers?
Because that's what life is about.
What is your term? What do you just say? Scoreboard? Isn't that what you say? You just say score.
Yeah, it's just point to the scoreboard.
Scoreboard.
No,
yeah.
I mean, there are metrics. There are objective metrics, and Will Scharf's side won yesterday. And Brad, you were playing devil's advocate a few weeks ago. To your credit, saying, Trump says that he only wants winners on his team. If you were Andrew Bailey, you would say, hey, look, this Scharf guy lost the case. We don't want losers. We want a winner. But, I think it's fair to acknowledge that Will Scharf won yesterday. And by the way, I have some links up on my website today about that very case, as we referenced in story number 1.
Once upon a time, long ago in my radio career, I worked for this interesting guy, E.A.W. Smith. We knew him as Ted, and he was a interesting man in that he was born and raised in England, was a RAF World War II fighter pilot, got into the war early, 39, at the time when the RAF fighter pilot's life expectancy was about 6 months, survived World War II, then actually became a test pilot for the first generation of jet-powered fighters from England, got discouraged with England, came to the United States, emigrated to the United States, lived in New York, ultimately came to St. Louis, and was a general manager, my boss at KSLQ. And once upon a time, I was not happy with some things that were going on at the station, and I got called into the boss's office. Mr. Smith, sit down in the chair. And normally when you get called into the boss's office, it was at least 20 minutes, okay? I walk in, I sit down in the chair, and he looks at me. I can still see him looking at me over the top of his readers. He had those readers, and he says, "Bloody Brad, I understand you're not happy with saying some of the things we're instituting at the station." And I said, "Mr. Smith, I don't like the fact that we're trying to change things when we are now the number 2 station in the market behind KMOX. Things are doing well. The station's making money." And he interrupts me and he says, "Brad, I don't know who discovered the ocean, but it wasn't the effing fish. Think about that." And I was ushered out of his office. And it was like, what in the world was that? At the time, it made no sense to me. Today, I live my life by that. You get too close to things. And when I was talking about the Will Scharf thing and the Andrew Bailey thing, you know that if you and I jumped in a car together and we did a man on the street, and we went to Clayton, we went to downtown St. Louis, we went out to Westport, and we just literally stood there with a microphone in our hands. We're saying, hey, we're doing man on the street interviews. What do you think of the situation between Will Scharf and Andrew Bailey? Most people look at us like, who are they? Right?
Yeah. If I ask them who Missouri's military hero Bailey was, they'd probably say Beetle Bailey by Mort Walker.
Well, the idea being it is most people, I think if you asked 100 people, and if you said, hey, this guy that's running for Missouri Attorney General, what's he doing right now? I think out of 100 people, one person, one man or woman would say, well, isn't he the guy that's on Trump's defense team right now? The other 99 people would have, first half, no idea who he is. They go, Will Scharf, I don't know who that is. And Andrew Bailey, they go, I don't know who that is either. See?
Right, yeah. Now, obviously in an election, you're looking at frequent voters. That's the people that you're targeting. But you're right. Still, most people are more concerned with just paying the Ameren bill, just paying the Spire bill, just trying to get their kids into daycare. And that political ads are an annoyance. For you and I, it's the horse race because we're involved either directly or tangentially in this industry. For most people, they're just like, look, I got to go to Schnucks and pick my kid up. I don't care about any of this stuff.
Well, or for example, if you look at this stuff, if you just go on one of the sites and you see this stuff about okay, here's a story that's on Fox News. Transgender non-binary runner makes U.S. Olympic team after winning women's race. Okay, most people going like, okay, I'm so tired of that. Okay, and then you go on to CNN. Okay, what's the story on there? Once again, you've got all sorts of crazy things on there, but there's a story on there about I would call this silent eating disorder. What experts want you to know about ARFID? Okay, hey, do you know what ARFID is?
No, you said it's a silent eating disorder?
I would call this and the story talks about it's some crazy new eating disorder, and blah, 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 blah. And then you go.
And is it where you can't make a noise while you eat? That's because I make a lot of noises while I eat, Brad.
Hold on a minute. It says, when Hannah was 7 years old, she told her parents she didn't want to be afraid of food anymore. She had stopped wanting to go to Girl Scouts, birthday parties, restaurants, family celebrations, and even the dinner table. Food was everywhere, and it gave her a lot of anxiety, said her mother, Michelle, who was not sharing their last name for Hannah's safety. Michelle first saw it when she tried to switch baby Hannah from formula to milk and solids, but Hannah refused. Often she would pucker her lips, shut or spit out the food she was given. Okay.
Is this called being a picky eater?
But this
I don't get this.
This is a huge story on CNN. It's a huge story on CNN. How come you don't know about that? I mean,
I know. Well, and Brad, you're an aficionado of Little Debbie's. Like, can you imagine if it's a silent disorder? Could you imagine not making delicious, scrumptious noises while you're eating a Little Debbie? I cannot bury my face in a white cake and not make sounds of ecstasy, Brad.
John's making fun of me again. He does a very good job of that, making fun of me.
I love I'm less of a Little Debbie fan than you are, but I do love some delicious white cake. I got to admit.
Well, the interesting thing about it is, talk about inflation. There was a time when I could go to the neighborhood, the Quickie Mart, the one right there on 47 and 5th Street in Washmo, and buy a 6-pack of donuts for, I believe, 49 cents. It's now $1.99. It's quadrupled in price, okay?
There's no inflation, pal. I'll meet you out back if you disagree.
That's right.
I'll meet you out back at the Instruments.
Well, the interesting thing was, I don't know if you've heard this or not. The voice always drives me nuts. The sound bites have resurfaced from Janet Yellen 2 or 3 years ago, when she's saying, well, we don't think there's any inflation. If there is, it's transitory, which means it won't be here very long.
That's right. It's transitory.
It's transitory. Okay. And John, if she were the CFO of a company and she said, well, we think things are going to be just great and we look to a great future with our company and our product line is stable and we see sales increasing, and a year later the wheels would be falling off, how long do you think she would be working at that company?
You know what would happen? I would end up writing a statement that said that Miss Yellen is looking forward to spending more time with her family.
Yes, exactly.
Brad, I'd love to stay in chat, but I'm here in Riverview, and a guy just came up from behind and tried to hug me, so I feel like I should be reporting this.
Well, John, we got to get out of here. Say goodbye, John.
See you guys tomorrow.
Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's Combest, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it?